Hi everyone, this is Miss Lasar, and today I'm going to be teaching you about 5 body systems: the musculoskeletal system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the urinary system, and the immune systems. So take a moment, flip to a new page in your notebook, give it this title. These are the body systems we're learning about today, and let's get started. Today, your notes are going to look a little different. We're going to be using outline format notes. When you're done, they'll look something like this, neatly organized with letters and numbers indicating each of the sections and the supporting details. We'll have our largest sections, the 5 body systems, indicated by capital letters. Supporting details will be indicated by numbers that are tabbed into the right. Supporting details of the supporting details will be indicated by lowercase letters tabbed into the right further, and your vocabulary words will be bolded or underlined or highlighted so that they stand out. Here's how to do this properly. Make sure your numbers and letters are vertically aligned. Anytime you have a lowercase letter starting a detail, make sure it's vertically aligned with the other lowercase letters that you have on your paper. Pay attention to how much you've tabbed in. Keep the spacing consistent so your numbers are always tabbed in the same amount. And just so you know, anything that's in blue after this slide, those are things that are interesting facts that are optional to write down. From this slide on, the rule is if it's in black, it's required to write down. It should end up in your notebook. If it's in blue, it is an optional fact that may be interesting to write down, but is not required. So let's get started. You can see what your first section is going to be called. Section A, the musculoskeletal system. Detail 1, the function. The function of the musculoskeletal system is to support the body, allow motion, and protect vital organs. We're talking muscles here. We're talking bones here. We're talking all the connections in between them. Okay, at this point, you might be feeling like, whoa, you're going too fast, Miss Lasar, don't change the slide. The most important thing is that you pause the video when you need to so you can write down all of the details. As we're going through this, you're definitely going to need to pause to slow me down. You're also going to be coming up with a lot of questions. I might make you curious about something. You may want clarification about something. Pro tip, write down those questions in your notebook. End up with a set of notes, your vocabulary words highlighted, and all of your questions in the margins or on the side of your paper. Okay, you can do this. Let's keep going. Detail 2 in the musculoskeletal system will be the types of muscle. Muscles are more complex than you think. There's actually 3 types. The first type of muscle, detail A, so again, pay attention to your spacing. Make sure that 2 is vertically aligned with the 1. Make sure the little a is tabbed into the right. The first type of muscle is skeletal muscle. Underline it, highlight it, bold it. These are muscles that connect to and move the bones. They are also voluntary muscles. Let me tell you what I mean by this. First of all, these are the muscles you think of when you think of muscles. When you move your arm, when you move your legs, when you blink your eyes, those are muscles that are connecting to bones, and those are muscles that you can voluntarily move, that you can control on your own. Those are the only types of muscles that you can control. There's 2 other types. The second type of muscle is cardiac muscle, and you can see it right here. This is muscle of the heart. It is involuntary muscle, which means that you cannot consciously control that. That's a good thing. You don't want to be the one in control of contracting your heart properly to make sure that it's pumping correctly all the time. You can see that this muscle looks thicker. It looks a little different at the cellular level than skeletal muscle. It's set up in a way to make it extra strong and really resilient so that your heart never has to stop contracting and never has to stop pumping. The third type of muscle is called smooth muscle. And these are the muscles that are found around your internal organs. These are also involuntary. You cannot consciously control them. So these are the muscles in your esophagus that perform peristalsis and push food down your esophagus, also pushing food through your small intestine, your large intestine. These are the muscles around your bladder that contract when you pee, the muscles around your uterus that would contract during childbirth. These are the muscles around your internal organs. Section 3, other structures of the musculoskeletal system. We did muscles. You know where we're going next. Detail A, Bones. You're very familiar with what a bone is already, but let's get more precise in our details. A bone serves as a rigid place of attachment for muscles, and it protects your vital organs. So this is where muscles connect to hold onto something stiff so that when they contract, they can pull something. They can pull the bones, the structure of your body. They also protect your vital organs. Think about your skull bone connecting your delicate brain. Think about your rib cage protecting your delicate lungs. There's some interior structure to bones. Detail B, the bone marrow is the interior of bones, and this is where new blood cells are made. So, interesting fact, if you've heard about leukemia, that's a cancer where you overproduce or you make too many blood cells. That starts in the bone marrow. Look, you can see here all of the blood vessels that are stretching into the squishy interior of the bone, into the bone marrow. They're not just providing nutrients and oxygen, they are also picking up the new blood cells, white blood cells and red blood cells that are created, and pulling them into the bloodstream. Let's keep going. Now let's look at the connections between bones and muscles. Detail C, we're looking at a joint here. This is where two or more bones connect. This is your knee joint. So there's different structures here. Detail D, the first structure, is cartilage. Cartilage is a squishy tissue that cushions impact and allows for smooth movement of bones in joints. You can feel cartilage if you wiggle the outside of your ear, if you wiggle the front of your nose. Both of those structures are made of cartilage. It's flexible. It's not super soft, but it holds its shape pretty well. And you can see cartilage on the inside of a joint cushioning, separating these bones and preventing them from rubbing and grinding against each other. Another piece of connective tissue in the joint is the tendon, detail E. The tendon, you can see here, connects muscle to bone. Okay, so here we've got tendons that are connecting the quadricep muscle to your kneecap, your patella right here. Detail F, a ligament is something that connects bone to bone. You can see many ligaments here connecting the structures of the upper leg to the bones of the lower leg. Cartilage, tendons, ligaments, these are all critical for holding your bones and muscles in the correct orientation so that they work properly and don't grind against each other. Okay, those are the details of the musculoskeletal system. One more interesting fact, when muscles contract, body parts move. So when you're thinking about any movement in your body, it's a muscle contraction that's making it happen. When you bend your arm, you're able to bend your arm because your bicep muscle is contracting, it's squeezing, it's getting shorter, and that means it's pulling the bones of your lower arm up as it gets shorter. When you extend your arm, that bicep muscle has relaxed, it stretches out, but your tricep muscle has actually contracted. To straighten your arm, you have to shorten, you have to contract your tricep muscle, and that will stretch out the muscles of your, or the bones of your arm, and your arm will straighten. Another type of muscle contraction. Here we've got a smooth muscle contraction. Childbirth is also due to muscle contractions. So here we have the smooth muscles around the uterus that would be contracting and pushing out the baby. All right, let's go on to our second body system for today, the nervous system. What's its function? To send electrical signals around the body to sense and regulate all of the body's functions. When I say all, I mean all. Your nervous system is responsible for all conscious and unconscious thought, for all of your reflexes, pulling your foot away when you step on something sharp, for all of your senses, detecting everything you see, processing everything you see, smell, hear, touch, and taste. All of your motor control and muscle movement. We said that movement was about muscles contracting and pulling on bones. How do your muscles know when to contract? It's because a nerve told them to. So I should say detail 2, let's talk about the structures of the nervous system. First structure, A nerve or a neuron. A nerve or a nerve cell or a neuron, these are all the same thing. This is a cell that sends electrical impulses, messages, through the body. Detail B, the nerve impulse. This is an electrical charge that travels down a nerve cell. So when you think about your nerves sending messages to each other, they do it by sending electrical signals all the way down their sometimes very long body. I want you to think about this nerve impulse like electricity traveling down a wire. Nerve communication with each other is similar to how electricity can travel between connected devices. Think about electricity flowing from a wall socket to your plugged in phone. So in reality, this looks really complex. This is a view inside your brain. This isn't even as complex as your brain is. We've got thousands, millions of brain cells all organized, stretching out their long limbs, connecting to each other, sending electrical impulses down to each other, triggering other electrical impulses sent between each other. And this is what your thought is. This is what your senses are. This is what your experiences are. All of those are a result of nerve cells sending electrical signals to each other. It's the pattern and the timing of those signals, along with all the many different ways that our nerve cells can be connected into different paths, that makes your experiences and your thoughts unique. So let's talk about what can actually trigger a nerve cell to send one of these nerve impulses. Nerve cells have many different triggers. Motor neurons, so this is a nerve cell that's connected to a muscle, these will be triggered when another nerve cell sends them a message. And then they'll send an electrical impulse all the way down. They'll send that message to the muscle, and the muscle will contract. But this is a hair cell in your ear. This is a nerve that's triggered by sound. When sound waves actually push these structures over, that will trigger this nerve cell to fire an electrical impulse. These are rod and cone cells in your eye. They detect light waves. When they detect a light wave hitting them, they will fire a nerve impulse. And so you can have your nerve cells sending impulses based on things that they sense, based on messages that they receive, and it's the timing and pattern of those nerve impulses that dictate what you experience. Okay, so let's talk about structures. Detail C, types of nerves. There's 3 types. The first type, small letter I, is a sensory nerve. This is a nerve that detects sensory input like light, sound, temperature, touch, etc. Motor nerves, II, these trigger muscle contractions. And interneurons, these send messages between nerves. So this is actually a reflex arc right here where we can see all 3 types of nerves. Here we've got a sensory nerve. You can imagine this being a pain receptor in your hand. And when you touch something sharp, this nerve will detect that and it will send a nerve impulse all the way to your spinal cord. It will transmit that message to an interneuron in your spinal cord, and that will transmit the message to a motor neuron, which will send a message all the way down to the muscle that it's contracted to, like your bicep muscle. It will signal that muscle to contract, that muscle will contract, and you will pull your hand away from whatever sharp thing it was that you were touching. Interneurons sound boring. They sound like they're just connecting things, but all of the nerves in your brain are interneurons. So all the nerves responsible for your thought processing, those are interneurons. Speaking of, detail D, your brain. Here it is, top of your body, inside your skull. This is where all the processing and control of your body functions happens. The spinal cord is the long tube of nerves coming from and going to the brain. So here we've got our processing happening. Messages will be sent down nerves in your spinal cord and then out to motor nerves that will stretch out to the muscles that need to be controlled. Sensory nerves will be stretching from the body part where they start all the way back to your spinal cord. They'll transmit their message to an interneuron in your spinal cord. That message will be transmitted up to your brain, sent between interneurons in your brain, and you'll be able to process that. Your brain is super complex. This is just going to inspire more questions, but you should know about this. Different parts of your brain control different things. Your frontal lobe is where concentration, speech, and smell are controlled. Your movement is controlled at the intersection between your frontal lobe and your parietal lobe. Your temporal lobe is where hearing is processed. Your occipital lobe is where vision is processed. The cerebellum down here is where coordination is controlled. I bet you have a bunch of questions. Write them down. Next system, detail C. This is the endocrine system. What's its function? Detail 1, the function of the endocrine system is to send messages through the body by releasing small molecules, hormones, that travel through the bloodstream. Okay, you can see an image that illustrates how this happens. Let's talk through it. We've got a secreting cell here that's making these little blue dots. Those are hormones, releasing them into the bloodstream. They travel, exit the bloodstream. And then look, they can physically connect to their target cell because their target cell has a little receptor on it that's specially shaped to accept that hormone. Okay, so let's define hormone. Detail 2, a hormone is a small molecule that signals other cells to take action. All right, one more time, similar diagram. Our secreting cell releases a hormone, travels through the bloodstream, it exits the bloodstream and attaches to its target cell. And once that hormone attaches to its target cell, that's the message that will trigger the target cell to do something. If this reminds you of the nervous system, that's good. The nervous system is all about using electrical signals as messages. The endocrine system is all about using hormones as messages. Think about what that means for how the messages travel, maybe the speed that the messages travel. These electrical signals will definitely travel faster than the hormones, but think about how far the hormones can go. You can release a ton of hormones and send them all around the body through the bloodstream. So what releases those hormones? Detail 3, that's a gland. A gland is a structure that makes and releases hormones into the bloodstream. And you can see from this diagram, there are glands all over your body. Let me tell you about some of the important glands. Detail A, the pituitary gland here at the front of your brain. It's right there. This is the master gland that controls the others. And in particular, it controls your growth. Detail B, the thyroid gland is at the front of your neck. It's this butterfly structure that's right on top of your trachea. This gland controls metabolism, and it makes the hormone thyroxine. Detail C, your adrenal glands are on the top of your kidneys. These control your fight or flight response, you getting scared. They make the hormone adrenaline. Detail D, your pancreas, you learned about this in the digestive system. It's also part of your endocrine system. It's a gland that controls blood glucose, and it makes the hormones insulin and glucagon. You're going to learn more about how those work in your next lesson. And finally, detail E, the testes and the ovaries, these are glands that control reproduction and puberty, and they make the hormones estrogen and testosterone that control reproduction and puberty and sexual response. And moving quickly to our next system, our fourth system for today, the urinary system. Our urinary system has this function to filter out waste, toxins, and excess molecules found in liquids of the body. We're going to be making urine. Urine is that mix of waste molecules, of toxins, of the excess molecules, and water from your bloodstream, excess water. So how does this work? How is this structured? Detail 2, structures of the urinary system. Detail A, we start with the kidneys. You have 2 kidneys, one on either side. Notice where they are in your abdomen. These are the filtering units. So this is where we're actually going to be filtering out those wastes and toxins and excess water. This is where we will be producing urine. Detail B, the ureters, these are just tubes. These are tubes that connect the kidneys and the bladder. Detail C, the bladder is where we store urine, and you know urine will collect there over time until there's enough of it and your bladder is full. And then detail D, urine will exit your body through the urethra. The urethra is the tube that urine exits the body through. Okay, not too bad. That was one of our more simple systems. And here finally is our last system for today, the immune system. Its function, detail 1, is to identify and destroy harmful invaders to the body. And let me just preface this by saying I am going to be way oversimplifying the immune system. The immune system is unbelievably complex. Here's one way that the immune system might work to identify and destroy harmful invaders to your body. A macrophage is a type of immune cell, a type of white blood cell, that can eat a cell that's been infected by a bacteria or a virus or a parasite. Once this macrophage, this white blood cell, has eaten that infected cell, it's going to take little pieces of this infected cell, it'll display them on its surface and go teach other white blood cells, memory T cells and helper T cells, how to recognize similarly infected cells. It's going to help these T cells create antibodies and recognize these infected cells, and then it's going to trigger these T cells to make way more of themselves, and we're going to send a bunch of T cells throughout the body looking for infected cells. When they recognize an infected cell, they're going to bind to it. They're going to secrete a bunch of molecules called cytokines that will trigger that infected cell to explode and die. And there's going to be a bunch more immune cells involved in this process, remembering what these cells look like for the future, recognizing cells that we haven't seen before. You don't need to record this. This is just an example of how complex the immune system is when it recognizes and destroys harmful invaders to your body. So let's talk about those harmful invaders. Detail 2, a pathogen. A pathogen is that harmful invader. It is a bacteria, a virus, or a microorganism that can cause disease. We can have parasites like tapeworms that can cause malnutrition. We can have protozoa, so little single-celled complex beings like this plasmodium that can cause the disease malaria. We can have fungi that cause things like athlete's foot. We can have prokaryotes, bacteria that cause diseases like leprosy or like strep throat. And then we can have viruses, which are technically not living. They're not made out of cells. They're smaller than that can cause things like AIDS, like coronavirus, or like the common cold. And we can also have really unusual things called prions. These aren't cells. They aren't living. They're actually even smaller than a virus. These are just pathogenic molecules that can cause certain diseases just as a single molecule, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, sometimes called mad cow disease. So these pathogens are what your immune system is dedicated to finding and destroying. Here are some structures that are involved in that process, parts of the immune system. Detail A, antibodies. These are proteins that attach to and flag pathogens for destruction. Next to antibodies, I want you to draw a little Y shape, just to remind yourself of the shape of these antibodies. They always have a similar shape. They are little Y-shaped proteins that have a binding site down here on either end, and they will bind to whatever the pathogen is. So, for example, the antibodies that you make that make you immune to coronavirus, those are antibodies that can specifically bind to the outer layer of the coronavirus, maybe to the spike proteins on the outside of the coronavirus. And that's a good thing because when those antibodies have bound to their target, they're going to attract other parts of the immune system, these white blood cells, that will destroy the coronavirus or whatever the pathogen is that they're binding to. So detail B, white blood cells. White blood cells are incredibly complex. There are 5 major categories of white blood cells that you can see down here. The functions that you need to know about for a white blood cell are some white blood cells produce antibodies that will bind to the pathogen. Some white blood cells attack infected body cells, so they'll recognize infected body cells, especially ones that have antibodies attached to them, and they'll attack them. And some white blood cells attack the pathogen directly before it's even infected a body cell. If you have an allergy, you have antibodies against that substance. So this is kind of a recap of how antibodies work. If you are allergic to peanuts, for example, your body has somehow produced antibodies against peanut molecules. And when peanuts enter your bloodstream, those antibodies will bind to the peanuts and will signal your immune system that a foreign invader has arrived and it needs to seek out and destroy it immediately. And that destruction, that response of your immune system, is actually what produces the symptoms of an allergy, including things like anaphylaxis, when your throat swells up and you have trouble breathing. So the immune system is super complex. I hope you wrote down a couple of questions. That was our last body system for today. I hope this inspired you to ask some questions to learn how your body worked. I hope you learned something. If you missed some of the details, go back and rewatch any sections that you need to, and we will see you all in class on Monday or Tuesday. Bye, people. Thanks for watching.